Nigeria. With a land mass of 923,768 square kilometers, Nigeria is located on the Gulf of Guinea on Africa's western coast. With a population of 206,139,589 by year 2020 estimates, Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. It is commonly believed that 1 in every 5 Africans is a Nigerian. At present, Nigeria is reputed to be the biggest economy in Africa in terms of nominal GDP, followed by Egypt and South Africa. The Nigerian economy consists mainly of oil, agriculture, mining, telecommunications, and services. The oil and gas sector accounts for about 10% of gross domestic product, and petroleum exports revenue represents about 86% of total exports revenue. Oil was discovered in 1956 at Oloibiri in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria after half a century of exploration. Nigeria subsequently joined the ranks of oil producers in 1958 when its first oil field came on stream, producing 5,100 barrels per day. Nigeria soon became an oil exporting country, with an exponential increase in its earnings from oil coming in 1973 and 1974 during the oil embargo ignited by the Arab-Israeli War. Arab members of the OPEC had imposed an embargo on the United States of America in retaliation for the decision of the US to resupply the Israeli military and to gain leverage in the post-war peace negotiations. There was a quantum leap in the contribution of crude oil to Nigeria's total export from 2.7% in 1960 to 73.7% in 1971 when the country became a member of the Oil Cartel, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Since then, the contribution of oil to total export has always been on the increase, except minor fluctuations in 1978, 1982, 1984, and 1986, respectively. Arab OPEC members also extended the US embargo to other countries that supported Israel, including the Netherlands, Portugal, and South Africa. The onset of the embargo contributed to an upward swing in prices. The price of oil per barrel first doubled, then quadrupled. Nigeria was awash with petrodollar. And sadly, as a result of that, all other previous productive and lucrative activities took backstage. Bye-bye the groundnut pyramids, bye-bye palm oil, bye-bye cocoa, bye-bye timber. Today, decades later, the story has changed. Oil can no longer carry the burden of Nigeria. From a height of $109 in 2008, $99 in 2011, and $100 in 2013, oil per barrel on the international market today is on the decline. Other prevailing realities include incidences of huge unsold inventories, fluctuating oil prices which affect budgetary projections, reduced production outputs brought on by local and global phenomena, new oil discoveries, exploration of alternative sources of energy, and the impending reality of depleting oil deposits added to the scourge of oil theft and the damaging environmental impact of oil industry activities. The precarious situation has been further exacerbated by the discovery of shale oil by the US and the consequent stoppage of the purchase of crude from Nigeria by the US in 2014. And out of the blues, The COVID-19 pandemic further threw a spanner in the works. With all these cascading developments, there is now an urgent need to diversify the economy and to look for other viable sources of revenue to sustain and grow the economy. Is Nigeria a mono-product economy?
Nigeria did not start as a mono economy. Any student of history will know that the North was very rich in groundnut and also cattle. The East, palm oil, and the West, cocoa. So we had agricultural base. And the leaders at that time optimized the development and utilization.
We've designed ourselves such that government revenue has been focused on oil. Foreign exchange earnings have been focused on oil, but we're a multi-product economy. If you think back into the history of Nigeria before the early 70s, we had a multitude of products and products that we externalized for foreign exchange earnings, for the regions, and for the country. When oil then came and we focused on oil, maybe because it was easier to extract oil, everybody kind of tunneled into oil production. All of the states tunneled into oil receipts and became a bit lazy and non-creative. And so that's why we found ourselves in this problem.
Before the advent of oil and gas, mining was the mainstay of the economy. And at that time, mining was doing up to 12% of the GDP. But since discovery of oil, we've drifted away from mining. And I think 1972-73 indigenization decree, we sent the remaining companies that were operating in Nigeria packing in the formal sector, because most of them were foreign companies operating in the mining sector. So from then on, mining became mainly artisanal. We did not have formal companies. And artisanal miners, by their definitions, are Nigerians, and but then in the informal sector. While we do not consider them as illegal, they are quasi-legal. But having said that, a lot of credit is lost to the mining sector because some of the revenue being generated from this sector is not credited to us. Rather, it's credited to the industry. For instance, look at the cement companies in Nigeria. At the end of the year, they declare so much in terms of profit after tax. They pay each taxes to government. These cement companies are essentially mining companies. About 95% of what they use, what goes into their operation, is for mining. They mine all the products. Even now, gypsum is available in Nigeria. We want to encourage them to now mine gypsum locally or buy from people who mine gypsum locally, so you don't have to import that. So if a company is mining based 100%, but when the revenue that's derived from such company is attributed to other sector. We've discussed this with Ramfac, but nothing seems to have been done yet.
From the point of view of the structure of our output, the structure of our GDP, we are not exactly a monoproduct economy. Oil accounts for sometimes even less than 10% of our GDP. The agricultural sector accounts for about 23% of our GDP. The distributive trade sector accounts for about 16% of our GDP. You know? So if you look at the structure of the economy, the degree of participation of citizens in the various sectors of the economy, the structure of employment across sectors, you will see that the economy is not exactly a monoproduct economy.
It's an economy that is a growing economy. It is diversified, truly diversified. The Nigerian economy's contribution of oil is today about 8%, which means 92% of the economy is from the non-oil sector. So yes, government over time has a large dependency on oil revenue, but even that has changed. Between 1999 to 2006, the oil revenue used to contribute 80% to the national budget. But it began to improve gradually, and so between 2007 to 2014, it was 70-30. As at 2018, the oil and gas industry was contributing 50 and non-oil was contributing 50. As at the end of 2020, the contribution of oil and gas sector has gone down to 45, and the non-oil sector is contributing 55. So it's an economy that has a lot of potential. We have to work more on strengthening our macroeconomic indicators and grow the economy at a rate that is much higher than the growth of our population.
First is the revenue accruing is not the central bank's money. It's the money of the federal government of Nigeria. And the more common one that everybody likes to talk about is the oil revenues, which is through the NNPC largely. But we forget that when they say the price of crude is $40 or $50, it's not that amount of money that comes to the government. While we're looking at oil as a significant means of revenue, it actually pales in comparison to the other ones that are got locally. The main sources of revenue locally are the customs, which is on duty and excise. In other words, paying for bringing things into the country. And then you have the other big player who these days contributes the most for non-oil revenue, and that is the federal inland revenue. Their revenues cut across a broad spectrum. There are levies, taxes on specific items or transactions that we might have. So like you have the value-added tax, which is a transaction tax, but that's separate from the corporate income tax, which is a profit-driven tax.
Oil revenue contributes to about 65% of total government revenues, and also about 90% of our foreign exchange earning. Oil plays a very significant role in the balance of resources in our country. But what is also true is that there are growing number of areas that are making progress, that are adding more revenue into the coffers of government, and we're happy this is happening because oil and gas will continue to remain the enabler sector of our economy, so that it creates the new wealth in a way that enhances the recovery of revenue from other sectors.
Today we have upwards of 8 different classes of taxes that we currently collect, ranging from company income tax, petroleum profit tax, value added tax, education tax, capital gains tax. We also have a levy, National Information Technology Development levy, signature bonus. We also have penalty for gas flaring. We also have a lot of them that have been in the industry, like the licenses that we grant to taxpayers in that industry, such as oil exploring license. We also have oil mining license. We also have pipeline licenses and fees that we collect. The law guarantees us to collect that. And also we have royalties. We also have rent that we collect, all put together. So these are the taxes that federal government collects.
On the average, about 40% of our revenue comes, when I say our revenue now, I'm speaking for the state. Lagos State revenue, about 40% of the Lagos State IGR comes from the federal transfers. If we go by percentages, over the past 2 years, there have been some extraordinary items. So anybody who looks at it will say, oh, about 60% of the IGR comes from federal transfers. But this is so because of, like I said, extraordinary items, usually like refunds from the federal government for roads that are built, on the federal government roads that are built. For us as LRS, the major tax type is from personal income taxes, which is made up of pay-as-you-earn taxes and direct assessment. Then we have other ones like the consumption tax under the HRC law. We have withholding taxes, We have other taxes like stamp duties, capital gains tax. Then extending to other revenue generating agencies of the state, we have motor vehicle registration. We also have the land use charge, property tax. So those are the key tax types that we have.
If you take my state of Kaduna State, I think the percentage of IGR against the FAC allocation is around 45 to 55%. The FAC allocation taking 55% and IGR taking 45%. I think that is the trend we saw in 2019. And going forward, we intend to flip the coin to make it in such a way that the IGR contribution will take a higher percentage, while the FAC allocation will take the backstage. So the intention going forward is to ensure that Kaduna State, from the IGR, we can cover our recurrent personnel and part of capital expenditure from IGR without relying on what comes from the Federation.
For the states, they need to understand from which area can they actually make money internally. When you talk about the state, you need to look at it's not just the state as a state. Within the state is the local government. So as a state level, you need to understand what can you do to really expand the tax net rather than deepening. I need information, I need data. And at the local government level, do they even know what taxes they should be getting at the local government level? Radio licenses, TV licenses, even some things that relates to aspect of markets.
What needs to be done? It is really agreed that taxes remain a veritable source of revenue for any self-respecting country desirous of progress and her independence. How do we go about this? Taxpayer enumeration is key. Having identified taxpayers, the various revenue-generating agencies have stepped up efforts to shore up revenue. Various strategies have been mapped out to get taxation onto the front burner.
We do not agree that Nigeria is a mono-product economy. Yes, over the years, they've been dependent on the oil and gas sector. But there are also several other sectors in Nigeria which we could tap the various untapped potentials to grow the economy of this nation. So we'll be urging that we look at those non-oil and gas sector, hospitality, the mining, the tourism, several sectors of this economy, so that we can tap the potentials, develop those sectors, and properly place Nigeria in the place of nations.
A function of development, a function of economic advancement is the proportionality of government revenue that comes from taxation. The most developed economies receive the bulk of revenue from taxation. It's underdeveloped or undeveloped economies that receive the bulk of revenue from resources, mineral resources and things like that.
Tax revenue is one of the major sources of revenue, and we want to make it the pivot of national development. That is, without any other source of revenue, tax revenue alone can sustain and help to fund the activities of the federal and the subnational governments.
Let's put it this way. If you have income, it will be easy for you to talk about project implementation. Now, where does the income come from? It either comes from things you are blessed with or your effort at getting things that you are surrounded with. Now, we have population advantage. Presently, we may be talking about 40% of our population living below poverty line. But what does it take to cross poverty to prosperity line? They get employed tomorrow, they fall into the mainstream. The economy improves tomorrow, they fall into the mainstream. Now, if this is the way it should go, then we should not have a situation where somebody, one way or the other, does not pay tax. Now, there are also two kinds of taxes we should be talking about, the direct and the indirect. The one that has to do with value-added tax, whether you like it or not, you pay. And then the direct one, you are earning income. And as the government keeps working on its fiscal policies, monetary policies, and all these other initiatives, the economy will be moving.
In the face of losing all revenue and the neglect which agriculture has suffered over the year, the role of taxation in diversifying the economy cannot be emphasized. Taxation is a key and sustainable source of revenue, and that is why concerted efforts are being made to ensure that we shore up the ratio of tax to GDP, which is dismally low at 6%. Like I said earlier on, the oil revenue has continued to dwindle and dwindle, to the extent that even some states are finding it difficult to pay salary.
Tax revenue is important because you need tax revenue to render services. You have been complaining about issues of infrastructure. You have been complaining about issues of security. You have been complaining about the issue of schools, public schools, general hospitals, our roads, water supply. There's a whole lot of public services that we need to provide. We need revenue for it. And if you don't have the revenue, how do you provide it? These things will degenerate, and at the end of the day, the citizens will complain about welfare issues. That the government is not doing this, the government is not doing that. So tax revenue is very, very important.
The taxes that citizens pay are pooled together. They are pulled together, and it is based on that pool that the government is able to forecast, is able to plan for development purposes. For example, the budgetary allocations that are made to different ministries, MDAs, every year are based on the forecasts that government is able to make about the tax, about the revenue it intends to generate for a particular year.
We are aware of the energy transition movement in the whole world. There are a number of forecasts that in 50 years to come, oil will be irrelevant. But we also know that oil will continue to require energy. You continue to require cheap energy, and we know also for sure that oil will still be relevant in the next 50 years to come. There are viewpoints, but the reality is that even in 50 years' time to come, oil will be relevant. What it means for us today is that you can use your oil resources to create the revenue that will be injected to other sectors, which will now create the new prosperity. You can also use oil and its derivatives, particularly gas itself, to ginger development and growth of industries in our country. This is what we are focused on today, and doing that means you can continue to create more wealth. When you process oil, it comes with a number of byproducts. What is known easily to people is diesel and petroleum metals, or petrol as we call it, and probably DPK or kerosene as people call it. That's what's known to people. But when you process oil, it has so many other derivatives. There's so much you can do with it. You can produce cooking gas, you can produce petrochemical materials that you can use to make plastics. You can can also process to get enough gas to even produce ammonia, which is used in making fertilizer. So you can see it's a wide range of possibilities in oil processing, which people are not aware of. And because our industry has grown to such an extent that it assumes everybody knows what is happening. But I can agree with you that people need to know more. Oil processing is a massive business. It's a business that puts many other values more than what we know about it today.
Taxation, its role in assisting the economic diversification in Nigeria cannot be overemphasized. Apart from the fact that through taxation we generate revenue, it equally reduces inequality and it gives road to a stronger fiscal discipline. Now, apart from this, when we talk about economic diversification, we are looking majorly at two things. One, the trade structure. We want to know whether you have a quality product that you are taking to a better or new market. Two, we are talking about domestic production. How are the input from different sections of the economy bring about reallocation of resources within the industry. So if you look at these two, there is no way they can function effectively well without a vibrant tax system.
We are going to use this tax money to develop our own people that will sort of take us to other levels, not only depending on the oil money, going into other sectors, agriculture, mining. So many areas are there that we can go into. But how can we go into that without diversifying, as you said? That is leaving this particular thing that has held us to go into that. And we need money. Where is that money coming from? It has to be from the tax.
If you notice, a lot of states are trying to adopt automation of their processes. That costs a lot of money. And the money to do that is not there. So it's limited the ability of states to be able to automate all their processes. Currently in Enugu State, we automated. The government approved and deployed resources to ensure we automate every single collection. We don't collect cash any longer. Channels have been opened up. People can pay right from the comfort of their bedrooms. That's the way to go. A lot of states haven't been able to achieve that because of lack of resources. So that's one. Second one is in the area of, like I said earlier, legislation. Need to review tax laws. That's very, very, very key. And then we need further collaboration between the states and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. The FIRS is like the umbrella body for everybody. The law has set up the Joint Tax Board, which we're all members of, and the chairman of FIRS is the chairman of the Joint Tax Board. That collaboration is there, but we need to strengthen it.
It pays to pay your tax because it is from taxes that government is able to provide social welfare services, including health and education, and also even the infrastructure. Part of it is tax money that is being used. It's not everything that is from borrowing. Every country that grows and grows on a sustainable basis is growing on tax. It's not growing on borrowing. It's not growing on legacy of countries that will come and give donations to you. So every responsible citizen must pay its tax.
What needs to be done? It is really agreed that taxes remain a veritable source of revenue for any self-respecting country desirous of progress and her independence. How do we go about this? Taxpayer enumeration is key. Having identified taxpayers, the various revenue-generating agencies have stepped up efforts to shore up revenue. Various strategies have been mapped out to get taxation onto the front burner.
Taxation is an exercise of sovereignty. So a sovereign must know the identities of those who reside within its territory. He must know when they come in and when they go out. That's the reason why you require visa before you go to foreign lands. And they want to know what the purpose of your visit and for how long. So it's important to know those who reside in all our geographical areas, state, local government, and federal.
And in order to effectively tax the entities in the Nigeria economy, we need to give them numbers called tax identification number, both for the individuals and for the corporate entities. When we are able to number every taxable entity in Nigeria, we will be able to have adequate projection of the revenue we are expected to generate through taxing these entities.
Taxpayers identification number identifies you, first of all, as an entity doing business. You understand? That should bring you into TaxNet. When that brings you into TaxNet, it increases the tax base. Now that tax base is now to be analyzed. Do you fall within the minimum tax that is not supposed to pay taxes? You'll be eliminated if you do. If you do not, this money that you have, how much have you paid as tax? And the informal sector, most of them do business as individuals. Some of them are not even registered.
For us to talk about tax diversification or its contribution, we need to know how many people are in the pool. And if we get to know this number of people are in the pool, they'll be able to know, oh, they've actually contributed X, Y amount. into the pool.
Efforts being made to shore up revenue.
And we need more from taxes, because if we were getting enough taxes, we wouldn't be borrowing at the rate at which we are borrowing. But having said that, the quantum of taxes that we are collecting have increased. From 2015 to date, it has almost doubled. The challenge is our expenditure also has expanded. In 2015, the budget size, just before the president took over, was about 5 trillion. Now the 2021 budget is 13.8 trillion, so it's more than doubled. So while the revenue was growing, the expenditure was growing at a much faster rate. And also, the president has clarity of what he wanted to do. He wanted to build out major infrastructure, and that takes a lot of money. And it's important that it is done now, because that is what we need for the country to grow on a sustainable basis going forward. So we're making huge investments in critical infrastructure like power, water, roads, rail, airports. These are infrastructure that are necessary for businesses to really grow in the Nigerian economy.
We have actually done a lot, and that's why we have even come up with a special tax department. What we're trying to do with that department is the department that will sit, think of which areas do we explore as far as non-oil sources are concerned. And they are coming up with issues like I-24, Interpol, monies that Nigeria has been losing, which constitute about 10, 15, 20% of some entities, contribute about 20% of some entities, territory, countries' GDP that we've been losing before now. You know that Nigerians travel a lot. Even if you go to the markets in Dubai, in China, you think you are in Nigeria market. So these are monies that Nigerians should have ordinarily be getting as part of the deposit that the travelers are making for crimes relating to ICT, crimes relating to arms, that if you do not take the money today, tomorrow when you go back, Interpol will tell you have lost it because that's the agreement you signed. So we are trying to deploy technology now to connect with Interpol, so that as Amaka move out to Nigeria for her holidays, maybe in Dubai, the 20-30% she has paid as part of her ticket, which Nigeria is losing on a daily basis, we get it to support our revenue base.
Don't stop relying on the oil. I can say oil is a blessing as well as a cost to Nigeria. We have arable land to begin with, but on the discovery of oil, everybody's attention turned to the oil. We now have cheap money, and so that has really doused the enthusiasm of Nigerians to be able to strive for the best in order to survive.
We did some kind of survey of 20 years, and between gas and oil, it's just we have gas contributing 5%, while oil 95%. So it's a very, very significant contribution that gas has been making to the economy, though the Nigeria is seen as more of a gas state than oil. But we have not unlocked the gas aspect. So which government is now trying to concentrate on? Gas is more cleaner, it's a green energy compared to fossil fuel. So our gas is going to be a major source of energy in the nearest future. With that, Nigeria may now have more resources from gas than oil. You can see a lot of programs that policy government is bringing up. We have this gas master plan that was launched recently, and that even most vehicles are going to convert to the usage of gas, being a cleaner energy than fossil fuel. So developing that, it requires a lot of investment, and we need to give a lot of physical incentives and even the governance to the gas industry to encourage the investment in that sector. The way government is looking at it and taking steps now definitely is going to be it will contribute more to Nigerian economy than oil in the nearest future. That does not mean that oil is going to be totally useless. It's going to be used for other purposes, not just energy. It can be used for other things, but it will not be as predominant as it is now. Gas will definitely take over from oil.
We are deepening gas consumption from oil prawns, gas to industries, gas to power, and now very recently we are doing gas to automobiles. The combination of this is with creation of new businesses, empowering of existing businesses, and creating new opportunities. And it means that you are going to create new wealth. Once wealth is created, taxation will increase. All other forms of government revenue sources will naturally increase, including value-added tax.
The things actually we've done was to look at our internal processes and also the processes that we're implementing for our service provider. In the internal process, we looked at our financial management system. We also looked at our payroll system, and we tried to provide IT solutions in order to actually modernize these processes. And aside from this, we now looked at our tax payment administration system, starting from the deployment of the web portal. We have the web portal actually, which actually is an online real-time collection monitoring system. We also have integration with third-party service providers. We have collection with the tax payment, the payment platform application providers. And we also make sure actually for our team, we make our team for the users to actually be uniquely identified.
We wanted a full automated system whereby we can start capturing the life cycle of a taxpayer from the day they register as a taxpayer up until the request, because ultimately we want to request for their tax clearance certificate. Over and above that, when they pay for their for the tax liability, they want to be able to issue the receipt. They want to also, for that receipt to be because it's a transaction, well, especially the withholding tax, they want to be issued their credit notes, which they will use to offset their corporate income tax when they file. So that life cycle, there was a need to capture it automatically and even to pay without paying online, without the interference of tax officials. Over and above that, what is key is taxpayer making any payment. That payment that the taxpayer is making, what raised what process, which is assessment, before getting to that final figure that you have established a liability for the taxpayer.
Before you even talk of making tax as bedrock for achieving sustainability of non-oil sector to run the economy, to be the pillar of economy, it is important to also look at other factors or other enabling components. First, you look at the investment activities, either internal or external. That is, how much of our resources are put in or focus on investment, and how much of foreign investment are we also getting. These are all dependent on the environment.
Implementation strategies.
In looking at the economy, how best can we also as custom be able to contribute? And that's what eventually emanated into the reduction of duty and levies on vehicles. Transportation is one of our biggest problems in Nigeria. Most of the rising cost of goods in Nigeria today is as a result of transportation. Because if you are to move goods from Lagos to Kaduna on a trailer, you know how much you pay. In addition to that, all our haulage vehicles are almost dead. By the time you hire a vehicle from Lagos to bring your goods to Kaduna, it will spend 2 weeks because it dies on the way. So we now looked at it and said, how best can we contribute? If we reduce the levies and duties on these vehicles, it would then mean that those who brings in this vehicle will bring in better performing vehicles.
We need to have improvement in product complexity because agric, for instance, seems to still be in its primitive stage. Permit me to use that word. And I say primitive because a lot of it has to do with raw materials. But when we begin to process, when we begin to store, when we begin to add value to it, that's when we make more money. And that's when your product becomes sellable. And that's where your forex will come in. So the aggregate that we have today that is basically raw materials to feed ourselves and raw materials to take out, we are not getting the true value that we should get.
I think we should learn from our mistake in the past. We should not forget other sectors that can also support, that we call it support. Agriculture is still there, and we have solid minerals. Solid minerals is still untapped. We have not even touched it at all. Agriculture is very great, and it's going to contribute more.
We offer them low interest rates, we offer them training, we offer them equipment. In return, they must formalize, come into cooperatives. When they come together as cooperatives, we recognize them. And when they're recognized by government, with all the incentives government is giving, all the largesse government is giving to them, then they can now pay the revenue due, which is the royalty to government. And this, of course, beginning to yield results. So our contribution to the economy, of course, is improving with this approach. Furthermore, because government is now focusing on mining as one of the ways to diversify the economy, is attracting foreign interest. Investors are coming into Nigeria to do exploration and all that in the formal sector.
The major businesses within the Aba economic ecosystem, just garments and everything about garment, from weaving to tailoring, then the shoe and leather industry is also very strong. The third one is fabrication, metal fabrication, creating things, spares for heavy-duty equipment and all of that. That happens around the Port Harcourt Road axis. Then we're also very, very strong in terms of trade and commerce. So Aba has about 15 markets. In fact, the whole of Aba today is threatened by, is engulfed by markets. The Aba has become a marketing place, the entire city.
We are looking at so many other options, including the fact that we are making case for taxes or kind of way we are going to collect something from the informal sector that use infrastructures, e.g. road that is constructed with taxpayer money, and yet they don't pay taxes. You cannot own 30, 40, 50 trailers and you use them to transport goods from Lagos, transport a finished product from maybe Dangote Smith in Abuja to Kano, Ibadan, and elsewhere, yet the owner of those stores don't pay 1 kobo to government as taxes. Number two, we have now seen that there is opportunity in stamp duty. So we have now transferred the management of that tax type to special tax department.
Implementation strategies, ease of doing business.
The ease of doing business initiative, which was introduced by the Office of Vice President, I think since 2017, has made some significant contribution to stabilizing the business environment and to definitely improving the ease of doing business in the country. You will recall sometime around 2015, Nigeria was number 170 out of 190 countries. Since then, we have moved up consistently, and I think as at 2020, we are now number 131. So yes, the ease of doing business has helped to move us on the ease of doing business ranking, which is set up by the World Bank. So yes, we in the manufacturing sector are aware of the impact of this initiative.
Investors still prefer to go to all these customary landholders to access their land, but because they want to invest so much money, no financial institution will go and give you some amount of money for unprotected title. They are not protected. So what I would suggest that probably land, a perfection of land, especially for agricultural purposes, if possible, should be made free. If you actually realize the fact that it's going to be used for agricultural purposes, and there's evidence to show that this is for agricultural purposes. Perfection of that should be done easily and it should be made free.
One of the major failures of governance in this country is our failure to address the issue of mass transit. And it has created a whole lot of urbanization problems. If you go to some other countries where things are much more structured, you can live as far away as Ibadan and be working in Lagos. You don't have to be struggling to be to live in the city. That is one. Secondly, you don't have to be struggling to be putting your vehicle on the road. Look at the stress even in Lagos alone.
Statistics say we are 41.5 million MSMEs. So, and it's scattered all over the place. But the trouble is that out of these 41.5, 41.4 are micro, unbanked. Of course, it's a tax now for government to bring them in, probably even into tax net, so that they can add value.
We are beginning to operate in an informal economy, more of the informal economy. I see a situation, or I would like to suggest a situation where government could target that group, formalize the informal sector, engage the informal sector, the small players, and meet them as a group.
Operating in the informal sectors are those we refer to as the unorganized private sectors, like the transport unions, like the market women, the artisan. The population is huge, but the contribution to the GDP is very, very low. And that is why concerted efforts are being made to make them tax compliant.
Government has recognized the fact that ICT is a growing sector and is very popular among the youth. So government, of course, you realize that the name of the ministry was changed to Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. That's to recognize the ICT in the communication. And government is putting a lot of effort into that. Recently at the Federal Executive Council, we have approved of an ICT park in Abuja here, which will be the first of many that will come up all over the Federation. This is going to be a center, you know, like an incubator for people that have ideas. They can be groomed and, of course, mentored there. You can see a few feats performed by Nigerians. They've developed an app and it's been bought for so many millions of dollars and all that. So it tells us that that's another sector that we should focus on as Nigerian. Government is doing that. Encourage our youths to come up with ideas, you know, disruptive ideas in ICT, which can be developed. So all these incubation centers, the ICT parks, which will be all over the Federation, as a way government is trying to encourage youths to come up, channel their energy into positive things, and of course, develop the economy thereby.
Okay, so seed money, venture capital, that's a type of financing that is available to startups. So startups are different from normal small businesses in the fact that they are enabled by technology, which gives them the potential for high growth, very high and fast exponential growth. So while a small business may go from 0 to 1 to 2, a startup can go from 0 to 100 to 2,000 to 1 million. So because of that very high growth and very fast growth, a lot of times they need capital, money, to enable that fast growth. Because of how risky it is, there's no guarantee that, they just believe that this startup is going to grow fast. So there's no guarantee for that. So in exchange for bearing that risk, they get equity, a share of the company. So seed capital and venture capital are that kind of, they are different from loans where you just take a loan and then you pay back with interest. Rather, you take the money from them and you pay with equity, which they can now cash out later. So the difference between seed money and venture capital is, seed money is usually at the early stage when you're just starting out. While venture capital is after you have figured out a bit of your business model, you want to accelerate and grow faster, then you take venture capital. So most of the funds that come to Nigerian startups come from abroad. So for example, in 2019, about 147 Nigerian startups raised a total of over $370 million. You can convert that in Naira. And 95% came from foreign sources. Less than 5% came from investors within Nigeria. Most of these foreign investors, one of the conditions they always give to put money in these Nigerian startups is they require, let me not say force, they require them to incorporate in their country of origin, so mostly the US. And the way they register in the US, they are called Delaware Corporation. So Delaware is a state in the United States that has a very, very interesting interesting regulations and law around setting up a company, where you can set up a company in Delaware without having to run the company from Delaware. So you can set up the company in Delaware, you are in Nigeria running the company. You can also give privacy to the investors, so they don't want people to know that I invested in this company, and many other things that come. So first of all, because of that condition, before they collect this money, they must incorporate. You find that many of them are both companies incorporated in the US and in Nigeria. So meanwhile, being incorporated in the US, they are going to pay what they call franchise tax in the Delaware corporation, because Delaware does not actually charge any corporate tax on companies registered, and they don't require you to be there, but they have what they call a franchise tax, which you pay every year, and some charges. So they paid that. And then the second thing now is, now when you say, okay, 90% of investors or 90% of the amount coming from investors is from foreign sources, then it means that shareholders in those companies are mostly foreigners. So what happens when, because the way startups are primed, they are primed for what we call exits. So after that fast growth, those people that have put the money and said, okay, we believe you are going to grow fast, and in 5 years we hope that you are going to grow so fast that this small percentage I had in your company is going to become, maybe I put $10,000, I'll end up having $1 million. You now start asking, is the company really a Nigerian company or is it a foreign company? So those are kind of the implications, and you can start talking about what that means for even taxation and all of that. You have more people being foreigners that have equity in those startups. When those startups exit, which is whether they go on the stock exchange, IPO, or they are sold like Pestac was sold, these people take the money and take it back to their country. If there's better regulation, then local investors will feel more confident to put their money in these startups.
We all know that particularly for manufacturing businesses, the cost of electricity, which of course is the first major input to manufacturing, is very high in Nigeria. And not only the cost is high, but the supply of electricity is poor, both in terms of the quantum of electricity you are able to receive over a period of time, as well as the quality of that electricity. And this is something that the manufacturing sector has been arguing with the government for a long time, that government must continue to make electricity more affordable, to make it more, to improve the quality of supply and to improve the availability of electricity.
How can we get Nigerians to pay taxes voluntarily?
The first thing is we need to share more of what is being done with their tax money. And there's a lot being done. But the notion is that almost all the money we get is from oil. So when you say anything development, you believe it is oil. In reality, it's not. Once we can show people that there's gain and benefit for them from the tax that's being collected, their willingness to pay increases.
Nigeria is one of the countries that have the lowest, tax to GDP ratio. So what are we going to do? There must be, attitudinal change. How? Through taxpayer education. Education the taxpayers to know the importance of taxation and their responsibilities. Two is to come up with, a kind of, leveraging on technology. Once if you introduce technology to take charge of all taxes, and eliminate cash collection, then there will be transparency within the system.
So what we intend to do going forward, what we've been doing, is to do a lot of advocacy, stakeholders engagement, collaboration with the taxpayers to make them see reasons why they have to pay these taxes. And this is simply in order to enrich the social contract between the state and the public.
A lot of people are discouraged because they see accountability not being implemented in words and in deed. So we need to pay emphasis on accountability. You collect tax, how is it being spent? That's critical. 2, resource utilization. Let's look at another angle. Are we looking at our people as an asset or a liability? I'm using a little bit of accounting here. Now, if we are considered asset, then the question is, everybody you see has the potential to contribute to the tax revenue.
One way that government can do this is to build trust amongst our people. And government has already taken a leap in that direction. The Nigerian government, through His Excellency the President, has joined the Open Government Partnership, which it's the kind of arrangement that is put in place with Open Government Partnership is the government and the public. So in OGP, you find that there are 2 chairs. There's a private, that's the public co-chair, and then the government co-chair. I am currently the government co-chair for OGP. And it's all about ensuring that there is transparency and citizens' participation and engagement in the activities of government.
We need to do more in terms of creating harmony among the peoples of Nigeria. That is lacking. That is lacking. And it will, once we continue to retract our small cocoons, then we can't become global champions. And then once we do that, we must also align the thoughts and the wishes of the people. It may be difficult, if you ask me to say and be specific about it, we are spending too much time talking about infrastructure, whereas we need to spend too much time talking about those people who are beneficiaries or who will benefit from the infrastructure.
Tax payment is about process. You need to get the right processes. You need to know your taxpayers, which I'm aware, and I know that the FRS is doing great work trying to get the register of taxpayers. That's the first step. The second step is to build trust of your taxpayers, for them to believe that when they pay their taxes, it will be put into good use. There are a number of concerns around Nigerians that if you even pay the tax, who is going to utilize it, it will be misused. In the last 3 to 4 years, we have seen growing responsibility of government, particularly in the current dispensation.
We are now emphasizing indirect tax. The phone calls you made before you came here, you pay taxes you didn't know. You understand? So if that is what Nigerians understand, we will go that way. But what we're going to do is to deploy technology that the MTN or the service provider that you use is on network for communication, of which you are paying that indirect taxes, will collect that tax that you didn't know that you have paid through them. That is the way we look at it as management team of FRS. So we are going to emphasize on indirect tax, and that's why we keep saying every opportunity we have to talk, because it is easier to collect. The burden are not felt by the person who is paying, and as far as I'm concerned, you get a lot more from it than the direct taxes. That is the fact that we have our own plans by now having a department called Servicom, who deals directly with the taxpayer, which is our own customer and the king in any business. And then we have taxpayer services department, who also deal in taxpayer education. So we align with the foundation, with the capacity buildings we are doing, with the interactions and engagement we are having with critical stakeholders, and with the collaborations too that we are having with other agencies of government and professional bodies. We will be able to get there.